We look into I basically look into this. It doesn't matter where I look out here or look.
Yeah, just as long as you're looking where they can see your face as you're talking. And tackles in life.
Okay, all right, we're going to go ahead and get started. And let me say good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you all to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. My name is Jerry Shockey, and I oversee all the youth and educational programs here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We're extremely excited to have you all connecting in for our Heart of the Hall of Famer series featuring Pro Football Hall of Famer Jan Stenerud. And, some of you have done this before. It looks actually, I think, 4 of you are actually new to the program. So to give you an idea of the real idea and premise behind this is to convey, what it took to get in the Hall of Fame beyond just athletic ability, beyond just skill and talent. We know our Hall of Famers are great examples of just those things, of skill, athleticism, talent, and those sorts of things. But I can tell you there are a lot of people across the country that possess skill and talent and athleticism whose bronze busts are not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It took a lot more than that. It took the character qualities that you guys are studying, the trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, citizenship, all those sorts of things, and a whole host of other characters, excellence and teamwork and perseverance and adversity and all those sorts of things to make it in the Hall of Fame. And I've got a little secret for you guys, and I don't think it's much of a secret, but these aren't character qualities to being a great football player or just a great football player. These are character qualities to being a Hall of Famer in everyday life, whether it's there being the very best student in your classroom, whether it's being the very best person at your Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, church group, whatever it might be, the very best guy or gal at your school, the very best at anything that you do. These character qualities are going to sit at the core. They're going to be the foundation that are going to allow you to achieve success in all areas of your life. And Mr. Stenerud is a great example, and I'll get into his bio here in just a moment, is not only did he go into a Hall of Fame career, but wait till you hear some of the things that he was doing off the field, especially with the business that he's working with. It was doing, $100 to $250 million projects. So really amazing. And in many cases, like Mr. Stenerud, you can argue that probably he was more successful off the field than he was on the field. We'll get into that here in just a moment. But there are a number of folks that we have to thank, because without them, this program is not possible. It took a team of individuals to do that. First and foremost, we need to thank our partners, our education partners. This program is powered by Extreme Networks. My good friend Jean Mickelson is there in Kansas City. We always have her traveling all across that region of our country to help facilitate these programs. So thank you, Jean, very much for what you do. But I also know Dustin Cooper and Dominic Mayer and Kevin Kunker and some other folks at Extreme Networks were involved as well. So thank you very much for your help with that. We have to thank our hosts there, our gracious hosts there, Harmon High School in Kansas City, Kansas. Principal John Rios, thank you for agreeing to do this and opening your doors there today. And allowing Mr. Stenerud to come in and take up a little bit of time in your library there. So I appreciate that very much. But also the folks that help, coordinate the technology stuff. The IT director there, Joe Fives, Assistant Director Steve Rhodes, who I've been working mostly the past 2 weeks. We've been testing back and forth, making sure this goes correctly. And I also think we have probably tuning in here in a moment is their network manager, Steve Haney, who's at a remote site. So Steve, and thank you, all of you, for all your work to make this possible. We need to thank the teachers at all the school districts. You made the arrangements, prep the students, all those sorts of things. So thank you for all your work and making this program possible here today. And then last but definitely not least, we have to thank the students, because you're the stars of the show, as we always say. You're the ones that are going to be driving the program. Mr. Stenerud's going to have some opening remarks, but aside from that, the next 50 or so minutes is really going to feed off of question and answers that you guys have for Mr. Stenerud. So before we introduce let me go ahead and introduce the schools here, so that not only Mr. Stenerud can see where they're coming from, but all the other sites that are connected and can see where they're coming from. So when I do that, you can feel free to unmute your microphone. Obviously, the folks at Harmon, you already have your microphone unmuted. But when I do that, feel free to unmute your microphone and give a shout out when I call upon your school. So we're going to start there. Mr. Stenerud, if you want to plug your ears for a second, because I'm going to ask the students there at Harmon High School, if you want to give a shout out, go ahead. so Mr. Stenerud has about 10, 15, 20 students in front of him as he's talking to the national audience as well. Let's go to a town that Mr. Stenerud is very familiar with because he played football in that area. Let's go to Bozeman, Montana at Bozeman High School.
Yeah, everybody
And Jan, I was supposed to tell you that Bozeman has been lightly dusted with snow today, just so you know. So we're going to go from Bozeman, Montana to Fairfield, Iowa to Fairfield Flattery. And Fairfield Flattery, we need to get your camera down. You're pointed at the ceiling. We want to see your students. So there we go. There we go. All right, thank you, Fairfield Flattery. Let's go to Fairfield Copeland. Okay, all right, pretty good there. Pretty good there. Let's see Fairfield Shank. Well, for bragging rights, Fairfield Shank, I think you beat your other two groups there. So thank you very much. So again, just a reminder, as you guys already are doing, keep your microphones muted throughout until we call upon you, just as we did now. But let me get to the introduction of our featured speaker, and that's Pro Football Hall of Famer Mr. Jan Stenerud. Mr. Stenerud, who was born November 26, 1942 in Fetsen, Norway, was an outstanding, now get this, was an outstanding ski jumper who attended Montana State. The reason why he knows the folks at Bozeman there very well, or at least the town, at Montana State on a skiing scholarship. Late in his sophomore year, Mr. Stenerud was spotted kicking a football by the college's basketball coach, who relayed the news of the Norwegian's abilities to the football coach. He joined the football team his senior year and ended up playing 2 seasons of varsity football. He connected on a then-record 59-yard field goal and 82 points scored. It was such a remarkable year that the Kansas City Chiefs were so impressed that they picked him up in the 3rd round of the AFL's 1966 future draft. The 6'2", 187-pound Stenerud excelled for 19 seasons and 263 games in pro football. He never missed a game because of an injury or an illness. He kicked for the Chiefs for 13 years, from 1967 to 1979, but was released in the summer of 1980. 3 months later, he signed a contract with the Green Bay Packers, with whom he stayed for 4 seasons. And then in 1944, the Packers traded Stenerud to the Minnesota Vikings for a 7th-round draft choice, and he retired after that season. Mr. Stenerud has the distinction of being the first pure place kicker. There are other kickers, guys that played quarterback, Sammy Baugh and Jim Thorpe, and a bunch of guys back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. They kicked as well. But first pure place kicker, meaning all he did was place kick, to enter the Hall of Fame. His list of astounding achievements is long, with 1,699 points. He ranked behind only the fabled George Blanda in all-time scoring at the time of his retirement. His 373 career field goals and 7 seasons of scoring of 100 more points were also NFL records. He kicked 17 field goals over 50 yards, and his personal best was a 55-yarder against Denver in 1970. In the Chiefs' upset victory, and it was a monumental Super Bowl because it was never thought that the AFL could compete against the NFL when they rivaled against each other. And even though the Joe Namath Super Bowl you guys heard about, even though Super Bowl III was kind of thought of as a fluke that Joe Namath and them could beat them, but when the Chiefs won Super Bowl IV, it really cemented to say, hey, this AFL league that's playing against the NFL league can really compete against them. So a very important Super Bowl in the history of the Super Bowl. But Mr. Stenerud, against the Minnesota Vikings, 3 field goals, including a then Super Bowl record 48-yarder. He accounted for the first 9 points of the game. A 6-time All-League selection, Mr. Stenerud played in 2 AFL All-Star games and in 4 AFC NFC Pro Bowls. He was named the Outstanding Offensive Player in the 1972 Pro Bowl. After football, he spent, now listen to this, he spent 22 years as a director of business development for HNTB Sports Architectural Group. So what do? Well, they only specialize in stadium and arena construction, new constructions and renovation projects. What does that mean? Well, he was tackling 110 to $250 million projects for this company and developing those business relationships for their group. And what they did was typically, even over the last recent years, they've been involved with most of the Big Ten schools, so Ohio State, Northwestern, Penn State, Michigan, Iowa, those schools, but also as well as with Broncos Stadium. And you guys might be familiar with the 49ers' new stadium, Levi Stadium. And then also throughout his career, he also worked in the banking, as well as he hosted his own Kansas City sports show that some of you in Kansas City, Kansas might be aware of. He has served as an honorary head coach for the Special Olympics of Montana for 20 years, and he has 2 kids, 44 and 42 years old, so I guess technically they're not really kids anymore, but he has 2 children. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to a quick video of Mr. Stenerud.
A 4-time All-Pro selection, Jan Stenerud was the first kicking specialist inducted into the Hall of Fame. In a career spanning 19 seasons, Stenerud never missed a game. A scoring machine, Stenerud was the NFL's all-time leader in points and field goals at the time of his retirement.
So if all the schools can join me here and unmute your microphones, join me to give a warm round of applause to Pro Football Hall of Fame, Mr. Jan Stenerud.
Thank you.
All right, if we can ask all the schools to go ahead and mute your microphones. And Mr. Stenerud, the microphone is yours, sir.
Jerry, thank you very much. That was a long introduction and did a good job. And I remember most of those things. And you talked about a dusting of snow in Bozeman, Montana. 1967, my wife and I packed up the car on that was the 23rd of April to drive to Kansas City. And we woke up the next morning and it was 1 foot of snow on the car in Bozeman, I remember. That was in April of 67. And we drove into Kansas City the next day. It was tornado warnings and about 88 degrees. So it changes a little bit. But Bozeman will be nice in a couple of days. I know that.
Hello?
It's my favorite. Montana has to be my favorite state of them all. I think I've been in 49 out of the 50. You wanted me to talk a little bit about character. There's so many, and you used the terms, frankly, that I was going to use, Jerry, a little while ago. The 6 pillars of character. You mentioned trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, citizenship. And of course, there are a lot of other things that means about the same that we talk about all the time. Because I remember as a young man, I was very driven. I remember in school, I approached my schoolwork as competition. I know that's maybe almost sick or not, but that's how I was. I wanted to be the best in my class. So I studied hard. I tried to get the best grades because I viewed that almost as an athletic event. That's an odd way to look at it. But I always had that desire, I suppose, to do that. And I also knew during the war, right after World War II in Norway, times were pretty tough. And my father, at that time, he was actually a carpenter by trade, but he had to do labor work after because the jobs were difficult to find in the late 40s. And he always told me that he said, you guys got to go to school, you got to get an education because you had Norway was cold, you got to get an indoor job. So it was very important for me an indoor job probably meant working for a bank or an insurance company. So I took studying very seriously. And also in sports, I don't know what it was. I just had this desire, this dream to be good, I guess. And I realized to be that. And I was very small until I was 16 years old. I was the smallest in my class. But I always had this, I don't know where I got it from, but I just had this desire to practice more than anybody else and try to be good. Now, where that drive came from, I do not know. But that always stayed with me. There's so many things to cover. I think maybe the best way, Jerry, is to start taking questions, make it more interesting so I don't lose my audience and I fall asleep on me here. So do we start with questions?
Sure, that sounds good. We can go ahead and do that. And just so you guys know, just something that I really honed in on that Mr. Stenerud said that seems to be a reoccurring theme with our Hall of Famers. And I think when you start talking about achieving excellence and achieving the pinnacle of success of being enshrined in the Hall of Fame and being successful in businesses and other areas, he made the statement, practice more than anyone else. And I've heard that over and over again. Vince Lombardi used to say it's a unique preparation that helped his team, not just the preparation that everybody else is doing, but of above and beyond what everyone else is doing. So, I think that's something that to take home with you here today is to practice more than anyone else. And that's whether it's on a test, on the football field, soccer field, basketball, in life. Is if you do that more often than not, you're going to find yourself on the good end of success. So let's go ahead and we're going to start with the first group. We're going to rotate in the order of Harmon, Bozeman, Fairfield Flattery, Fairfield Copeland, Fairfield Shank, and you know what I forgot to introduce? Geez, I left one off the end here. Coosa Valley. Do you want to give a shout out real quick in Anniston, Alabama? I am so sorry, Coosa. My apologies. My sincerest apologies. So we're going to go through all three Fairfield groups and then Coosa Valley. We'll go in that order and we'll rotate around as many times as we possibly can. A couple things again. Remember, please project loudly and clearly into your microphones at your school so myself and Mr. Stenerud can hear those. So we'll start off with Harmon High School there. The students there, I think they might come up right next to you, Mr. Stenerud, and ask the question so our national audience can hear as well.
Okay. I'm D'Angelo Hicks from JC Harmon. My question is, going into Super Bowl and facing adversity, what were some things you did to prepare yourself for that?
Well, Super Bowl, that's nice of you to ask that because it was a little bit before you were born. The Chiefs won the Super Bowl 44 and a half years ago. And, of course, we're in Kansas City here now, so that's where Harmon is. So people are starved for Super Bowl. What I remember was that it is so important to win that game. You hate to go through a whole season and say, what happened? What happened if you don't win the game? So you have to win that game. Otherwise, you get questioned for the rest of your life why you didn't. All I remember is that I thought to myself, I don't really care what kind of success I have or how much involved I'm going to be as long as we win. It was always about winning then. But obviously I was nervous because you play in the Super Bowl and if the game will come down to you and you have to make a kick, if you win it, you're going to be remembered for a long time. And if you don't, you're going to be remembered for even a longer time. So there's no question that you were nervous, but you train, you see, when you practice. The coaches tell you what to do all the time. You have a system and you have a process that you go through all the time. So you're so busy with that. So when you concentrate on those things, you don't think about the outcome or think about the importance. You have a better chance to succeed. So even when you watch a golfer and he's ready to make a putt, he has a certain system or a certain way he does it all the time. And if you get into a way of doing things, then you concentrate on those details, and then the end result will work out the best. But were we nervous before the game? You bet we were. But once I got on the field, I do remember this from my 19-year career, when the team needs a field goal and you are 3 points behind or you have a chance to tie the game or win the game late in the game, you do get nervous on the sideline. And we didn't have any warm-up nets then, that I have now. And the balls have been lying on the sideline for maybe 3 hours in cold weather, and they didn't go very far towards the end of the game. But I also knew from experience that once the coach says field goal team, I also knew once I crossed the sideline and got on the field that I didn't hear anything, that nervousness was gone, and I was totally focused on making that kick.
Great first question to start out the program there, Harmon. Now, we're going to go to Bozeman. I know Bozeman's having some video issues, so Bozeman, you may, after you ask your question, may want to disconnect and then reconnect to see if that helps the issue that you're having there. But if you want to right now, go ahead and ask your question and have him respond, and then after that, try disconnecting, reconnecting.
Okay. What is one of the biggest obstacles that you've had to overcome throughout your career? You heard that.
One of the biggest obstacles. Let me see. I'm going to, I was in 19 seasons, and and you take for granted that you're going to succeed all the time. Well, there was one time in particular that I did not succeed, and I succeeded a lot more than I didn't succeed. So I'm going to bring up my most dreadful game, which is still a nightmare almost to me. It was my 5th year in the pros. We played the Miami Dolphins on Christmas Day in Kansas City, and I had a bad day. I had a kick blocked in overtime. I had a kick that was supposed to be a trick kick that it looked like I was missing a kick, which I did, but it was supposed to be a little bit more complicated than that. But what I remember the most, I missed a 31-yard field goal with 31 seconds to go, and the game went into overtime, and on and on and on, and Miami finally won. And that thing bothers me. It bothered me a great deal then. I didn't realize that 40 years some later, that when Christmas rolls around, that time of the year rolls around, it comes back almost as strong as it did at that time. So I always thought about not doing this anymore for just a few seconds, I guess. But that is no way to approach adversity. So everybody gets knocked down, and I almost got knocked out, but I got back on, and I never missed a crucial kick or a game-winning kick again, and I went on in the league for 14 more years. So from a personal standpoint, I was able to overcome very difficult situations. The only bad thing is that you can't do anything about it. You can't change the result from that game. But they all have, I think everybody gets knocked down. And then you got to have the willpower and the stamina and the commitment to get back up again and perform even better than ever before. And if you don't have that, quality, then you're in trouble. But most of us have that. If we dig deep enough, I think we all have that in us.
Thank you very much, Bozeman. And my apologies for any technical issues you guys are having, but if you disconnect, reconnect, I think that should solve the issue. So let's go ahead and go to Fairfield Flattery.
Hello, my name is Ahilan Kumar. Hi, Mr.
What was your
Stenerud.
name?
Ahilan Kumar.
Okay, Ewan.
Hi, I have a question for you. Has life always been fair to you?
Has life always been fair to me? Pretty good question. Depends upon you. I have to say this. I have a lot of, as you can tell from the introduction, I'm over 70 years old. So by that time, I got a lot of scars on my back. I guarantee you that. There have been a lot of things that do not go exactly to plan. I've been very fortunate. A lot of things have been a lot better than what I guess you have a right to expect. But do I have some setbacks and have some disappointments? You bet I do. I got a lot of them. So, but is that fair? I think that basically that's what life is. And you got to expect that. You just got to overcome. And remember, if you do the right things, you're going to have a lot more good days than you're going to have bad. As a matter of fact, they'll be outnumbered maybe 50-1 if you do the right things.
Another great question there. Thank you very much, Fairfield Flattery. Let's go to Copeland, Fairfield Copeland.
My name is Kyra Hunter. Out of the 6 pillars of character, which one do you feel is the most important and why?
Oh boy, that's a good question too. I wrote down just in case you asked the question. Let's say trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, citizenship. Which one is most important of those? I know if I were to rank them from 1 through 6, I might change that ranking system every time I answer the question. So I think they're all very important. Maybe trustworthiness might be number 1. The honesty is probably the most important. I think that's most important. And then I'd hate to rate those things, but if you can't trust somebody, if you don't tell the truth and you're not honest, then you have a problem to begin with. So that might be the most important of them all.
And Mr. Stenerud, can you talk about that then? How important that was to your team, and then also how important that was. I mean, you were with a major company as well that was doing $100 to $250 million projects. Can you talk about how important honesty was on the field and also in your business life as well?
Well, it's the the core of your being. I mean, it's if you can't believe people, I tell you something. If you can't trust them to do what they're supposed to do, you're not going to have any success. So that's important every day in your life. When you deal with someone that lie, and they all have done that, you can't do that. So, but trustworthiness, it comes also. I'm talking more about actually trusting and being honest now. An offspring of that is accountability and all the other things that come with it. On the team, I've been around a lot of sports, and I did not like American football when I saw it for the first time. I didn't really understand the game. We went to the game because most of the students went to the game, and it was a lot of fun. And I saw they didn't throw the football much in those days, so you saw a running back run into a pile. He was stopped after about 3 yards most of the time, and then they stood around for 30 seconds and talked a little bit, and then they ran the same play again. It looked like to a novice like me. So I didn't care that much for it. And then once I got involved, actually my senior years when I actually went out for the team, and the coach, Jim Sweeney, a legendary coach in Montana, later for Fresno State, and he's actually my godfather, was a wonderful man. He died a couple of years ago. And he made me go to all the meetings. So I learned about the game of American football. And I really believe that it might be the greatest team game ever invented, because you got 11 guys on the field. And if every single person has a responsibility, and if they don't get the job done on that particular play, it's not going to be a success. So in football, yes, you have to trust and believe in your teammates, but remember they're playing against people that are almost as good as you are, or are as good as you are. So all you can ask for is to do the best that they possibly can, and do what they're responsible for and accountable for each play.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stenerud. We're going to go to Shank, Fairfield Shank. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jamie Johannes, and my question is, what advice would you give to a young athlete?
What advice could I give to a young athlete? Well, that's a good question. It's a long list, but okay. We know that you got to practice a lot. You got to work smart. You got to get a schedule so you still have time to do the most important of it all, of course, is studying and do what you have to do in school, and just be a good person. But you got to set some goals and try to find a sport that you like, and then you just got to outwork everybody else. And but the thing is, when I remember in Kansas City, for example, on a very rainy day, I used to run the stadium steps all the time. And I thought, well, today the kicker maybe in Cleveland, for example, it's a rainy day in Cleveland. I bet you he's not running the steps today. He's not doing what I'm doing. So you try to get an edge all the time. It's like anything else. You mentioned athlete. It's anything in life. It is hard to have the commitment and the drive and the discipline to work hard. But that's the theme you're going to hear over and over again. Just do the very best you can. In other words, be the best you can be. And that takes a lot of different traits to do that. Okay?
And I love that line. It's simple. Outwork anyone else. And I love that because, it sounds simple, and it is simple. It's a very simple concept. You just need to work harder than everyone else. But, a lot of people don't want to put in that time. In many cases, I'll use the example in the NFL. A lot of young people want to be the NFL athlete on Sunday and Monday night, but they don't want to be the NFL athlete that's on Monday through Saturday that's preparing for that game. You don't realize what takes place to get them to that level. So I love that, outwork anyone else. And again, that's
Jerry, I got to interject a little bit there.
Sure.
The truth of the matter is that the athletes you see in the NFL and in all the sports on television, the top league, they do have those qualities. There's no question. The best ones work really hard, but they are very talented. They had a pretty good starting point. They are talented. So whatever you do in life, whether it's if you find your best sport, or if you're going to be a musician, or work in the tech business, or work in the bank, once you find out that you have a talent, that's when you have to outwork everybody else. And sometimes you don't know what that is. Some people know they're going to be a doctor when they're 10 years old. Some people don't know until about 30 years old exactly what it's going to be. But if you work hard and you try hard, you're going to find it. But if you say, well, I don't know what I'm going to do, and I just sit around, I don't do anything, then it's not going to work out. So you're going to constantly search for something that you're talented in, and then get after it. You will be successful if you work hard.
Great point, Mr. Stenerud. Let's go from Iowa to Alabama, Coosa Valley.
Who inspires you to live your dream of being a pro football player?
Say that again, please. Who?
Who inspired you to live your dream of being a pro football player?
Yeah, who inspired me? Oh boy. Well, first of all, when I grew up in my home, my family were skiers, and I had an uncle that was the alternate for the Olympics a long, long time ago. So sports was always important to me. And I mentioned earlier too, sport was important, but my parents made sure I had done my homework before I went out and played in the snow or on a soccer field or whatever. But you get a lot of breaks along the way. That the coach at Montana State that gave me a chance, because in those days, you didn't have a guy that just kicked the football. There was a tight end or a quarterback or a receiver or a guard that would also kick field goals and extra point. And that was kind of a sideshow almost, because I had a knack of kicking the ball further than anybody had ever seen, but he didn't have to really give me that chance. And so was a big part of it, obviously. And when I came to Kansas City, another man that made a big impact on me was our coach at that time, Hank Stram, who believed in me and made me feel like I was probably better than what I was. And he was a very big part of that. But in addition to that is the inner drive that you have yourself. That is something that you must have. But there are always breaks along the way and people along the way that help you a lot.
Okay, thank you very much, Coosa Valley. Great question. We're going to go back to the top again. So if a student wants to come up from Harmon right next to him, I think maybe there already is. So go ahead with your question. Go ahead and lean in there.
I'm Mariana. I just wanted to know, in times of adversity, what did you do to help you pull through?
In time of adversity, well, like I mentioned one in particular a little while ago. I guess first of all, you are competitive. You got to be stubborn when you are in sports, or in life for that matter. And stubborn meaning that you are so determined that regardless of what happened, you just got to hang in there. You can never quit. You can't give up. You just got to get after it. And I think that comes from other people encouraging you, coaches, friends, family, but still, it is you that have to make it happen. So all the things we're talking about come into that. And we all have that in us. We all have that in us to do that. So you just got to know that everybody goes through some tough times. Some of the most successful people, you watch the most famous people on television, even presidents or whatever. They're going to have some tough time, and they're going to be a lot of times that are not fair. But you just, you have a good support system with family and friends, and then most importantly, you just got to do it. You just got to make yourself do it, even though it hurts.
Thank you very much. And that's the first time I've heard it put that way. And I love it too. I think I'm going to use it in the future for future programs, if you don't mind, Mr. Stenerud. Is that you got to be stubborn. And I hear Hall of Famers talk about that, but not use the word stubborn with it. And I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying. So thank you very much, Harmon High School. Bozeman.
What is it you think you would have done had football not worked out for you?
That is an interesting question. I never really thought of it fully. I came to Bozeman, in 1962, a little bit before you guys were there. And my plan was to be an engineer. And of course, when I left Norway, my mother didn't really want me to accept the ski scholarship because she thought I might meet an American girl and stay in America. My father thought it was a good idea because I get a free education in a wonderful, exciting, the greatest country in the world. So an education was so important to us, but also to have a chance to come to a great place like Bozeman Then after a while, I realized I was still homesick, but I liked Bozeman, and it's so pretty around. I went to Bridger Bowl and skied, of course, all the time, and the Bozeman's such a neat town. I can't wait to get up there. I'm going to be there in July and August. I rented a place already for this summer. But then I find out in engineering, I was pretty good in math and physics. As a matter of fact, I got A's and B's in that, but there was a course called mechanical drawing that I just couldn't see, couldn't fathom. I studied night and day and got D's. So I switched to what we call general business, because I thought if I'm going back to Norway, that's going to be good. So my plan was to then continue to go to school, graduate, go back to Norway, but then football got in the way. My senior year when I kicked, and then I made it in the pros, and I lasted 20 years. So I guess if I hadn't made that one kick against the Grizzlies from 59 yards, and Grizzlies, for the Bozeman people, they know what that is. We're the Bobcats in Bozeman, our arch rival are the Grizzlies in Missoula, Montana. And by the way, I never lost to the Grizzlies when I was up there. So if it hadn't been for that 59-yard kick, I probably would have gone back to Norway, because the pros would never have heard about me in a small school in those days, far away removed from the professional leagues. And I probably have been in the banking business or insurance business in Norway. That's probably what would have happened. And I got to interject a little bit at this point. Norway, when I grew up, was right after the war. In the late 60s, they discovered oil and gas in the bottom of the North Sea. And most people do not know this, but Norway is the 3rd largest oil and gas exporter in the world, 11th largest producer. And I'm just going to throw a little figure at you there. The minimum wage in Norway, the minimum wage is $27.65 an hour. Now, it costs a little bit more to buy things there too. But still, the purchasing power for people over there has grown enormously the last 30, 40 years. So I guess the answer would be, hopefully I've been in banking business or insurance business. And how successful I would have been, I do not know. But I know one thing, I would have tried hard.
Well, I think if you guys look at his football career and then you look at his business career after that, I think we can take a very educated guess would he have how successful he would have been in whatever endeavor that he chose in life. So thank you, Bozeman. Another great question. Let's go to Fairfield Flattery. Say that 3 times fast. Fairfield Flattery. Fairfield. Yeah, go ahead. Unmute there, Fairfield. Fairfield. It's a hard one to say.
I see you looking.
I won't mute you guys. Go ahead. I unmuted you. Oh.
My name is Eric Casca, and what does it take to be successful?
What's your name?
Eric Casca.
Eric, what did it take to be successful? Now, the thing is, I don't really think of myself as being, I don't use the word that I'm successful. I'm not sure that's kind of, you pat yourself on the back quite a bit if you say that. There's some people, I guess, have been successful in the sports world to some degree, but it's the same thing we talked about all morning. Being a good person, trustworthy, accountable, determined, be a good person, and work really hard. I don't know how many other words I can use for that. But when you get tired and you don't want to do it anymore, you just do a little bit extra, okay? When it seems like you're worn out, you just about had enough, you just do a little bit that the other person around you probably wouldn't want to do, okay? So you just outwork them a little bit.
And Mr. Stenerud, if I can throw in a question in here, something that comes up with a lot of our broadcasts is our Hall of Famers talk about the people that they surround themselves with. A lot of times we think of peer pressure as a negative thing, but I also feel, I have to be of the opinion that peer pressure can be a very positive thing. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm not sure if the word peer pressure, that if I did interpret that the same way that you are asking, if you talk about being a part of a team and you have to be accountable because everybody else is depending upon you and they're doing their job and they're good and you can't let them down. So you've got to be accountable and hold up more than what you are expected. You got to do you got to be a little bit better than what is expected of you.
Sure.
But that's not exactly what the peer pressure means, I don't believe.
Well,
So
no. But in many cases, peer pressure can be, a student saying, "Hey, let's go smoke" or something like that. But it could also be a student saying, "Hey, let's go to the basketball court and shoot 100 free throws so we can work on our game." So there's the positive influences that you have as well.
You brought up a point, and of course, I missed out. The drugs and that type of thing. I was in school in Montana in the mid '60s when I was a senior. So those things really hadn't started there yet. So I cannot even identify with that. I would think, though, when you are in sports, that you would not dare to, I would not dare to touch those things at all, would not. I remember I didn't have a beer in front of my parents, and I left Norway when I was 19 years old. I remember they came and watched the Chiefs game in the late 70s, and that time I'm like 27, 28 years old. And it was very strange to me to have a beer with my parents because I hadn't done that before. So I was very pure. I guess I always done things in moderation, I suppose, when it comes to things that maybe you shouldn't do. So of course I will tell people to stay away from all those things, but it was easy for me to say because a lot of that stuff wasn't around. It wasn't around, and so it was easy for me to say no. But I know myself. There's no way I would touch any of that stuff. There's no way that I would touch drugs because that isn't the way I was. And most of the people that you see, I say most, there are people that have a problem, and sometimes it is difficult because maybe it's in you. It's harder for some people, harder for some than others because maybe. I know alcoholism, for example, even quit smoking. I know it's very difficult to do, and you need help. But in my case, I was fortunate. I never had the great desire to use those things, so there was something that I would never even considered when I was young, not at all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stenerud. Let's go to Fairfield Copeland.
Hi, my name is Gabrielle Godwin Webster. Do you regret anything as a child that could have changed where you were going?
Do I regret? Say that again. If I did something as a child that I regret? What did you say?
Do you regret anything you did as a child that could have changed where you were going?
Regret anything as a child that would have changed what I was? No, I don't. I don't think so. We all have our little battles when you're in high school with different things. No, I think I had my goals pretty well established in terms of who I was and what I needed to do. I was not that I know any examples. I wasn't perfect all the time, but I never did anything that I could be severely punished for. I never broke the law. I never did any things. I listened to my parents and teachers, and I think I was a pretty decent human being. Not perfect. None of us are. But I guess I don't know if it came from my parents or my teachers or whatever. I kind of wanted to please them, I suppose. And it wasn't hard for me to do that because I felt a lot of times the same way they did. I don't think I answered your question completely because I'm not exactly sure what you were getting. Will you try one more time? What do you think? You're saying, do I regret?
Is there anything you regret as a child? Is there anything you did that you regret as a child that you did that maybe could have had a big impact on your future? I mean,
that it was an opportunity that came along that didn't take advantage.
Or that. Yeah.
Yeah. I had to. Nothing comes to mind right away. Nothing comes to mind. But I also learned there's a saying in Norway, I guess when I grew up, there's more than one train. There's going to be another one coming along. So if you miss an opportunity, it's not the only one. There are going to be others.
Thank you very much. A great question there, Copeland. Let's go to Shank. Fairfield Shank.
See,
Hi, my name is Devka Farasi. And my question is, what advice would you give us on sticking to our dreams?
what advice would they give you to stick to your dreams?
Yep.
Well, just stay committed. Work through all the difficult times. You may make some small changes from time to time, but don't change a lot. Stick with your plan. And if you do that, there's going to be some opportunities to come along. There's going to be a little bit of luck involved. To all of us, I talk to people in the Hall of Fame, and there's also a time in your life you get a break or two. So sometimes it may seem like it's going to be hard to reach your dream, but if you keep going after, stay committed and disciplined, and work hard, it's going to happen for you.
And Ms. Stenerud, if I can throw out a question in there before we go back to Harmon. So Harmon, go ahead and be prepared and ready for the next question. Who's influenced you in your life? I mean, obviously we talked about your parents, but has there been especially at a young point in your life, in elementary, middle school, high school, was there someone outside of maybe your family that really had an influence? And the reason why I'm asking that is because a lot of these students, they might not have a positive influence at their house, but there are folks that are in their lives that do want to help them out, that they should seek advice from. Who are some of those folks, and did you have any of those folks when you were younger?
Yes, I did. I'm glad you asked the question. And yes, I did. And I did come from a solid home. Fortunate. My parents are very solid people, and they were very nice people. So I was fortunate that I came from a steady, solid environment. But the school system in Norway, I had the same teacher for 3 years in all the courses we took. That's the way it was in Norway in those days. And my teacher, her name was Mrs. Anderson, on first, second, and third grade. She was very important. I remember one time we had a library in school. And so once a week we pick out a book, take it home and read it. And for some reason one time, I made some stupid comment and saying to her that, that book I read, I got better books at home. And then she didn't say anything for a while. So next time, I think it was on Friday, we get to take a book home. And she said, everybody can get a book, but Jan cannot get a book this week because he has better books at home. Well, it stuck with me forever. Saying something that stupid and open your mouth and saying something like that. And she made a point to me to think a little bit before you open your mouth. And I remember that incident. So teachers are so important. No question that teaching, I talked a little bit about Norway again. Teaching is a highly paid profession in that part of the world. And there's a reason for that, because it is so darn important. Teachers are so important. You spend, 5-6 hours in school or more every day. And it's critical. It's so important. So there's one thing that I see in this great country of ours. If I could have an input on making education even more important, that I think it's essential. And anyway, teachers are, next to your parents, are got to be the most important people in the world.
Well, Mr. Stenerud, if you didn't have fans in Kansas City and Bozeman and Anniston and Fairfield, Iowa before, you definitely have them now. There's some teachers that are probably enjoying, and all that we would concur with what you said as well about teachers, is that they are that important.
They deserve it. I mean, that comes absolutely from the bottom of my heart, the importance of their work.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Harmon.
My name is Nyona Doe, and my question is, why respect your opponents when on the football field it's a battle?
Why do you respect them?
Why do you respect your opponent?
Why do you why?
It's like a battle, yeah.
Why do you respect them? Because they're prepared, the same dreams like you do. They worked hard to win the game. They practiced all week. So if you don't respect them, and if you take it for granted, you're not going to win as much. See that when you respect them, that means you got to give it your all the attention and all the willpower and all the strength you have to try to win. Because winning is important, but the winning is the end result of doing the very best you can. If you do your job or do the best you can, the result and the end result is going to be successful most of the time. But winning, it's overrated in some way. But if you do your very best, then the end result is going to be a lot of wins. Not every time, but you're going to win more often than not if you do what you're supposed to do.
Okay, and you know what? My apologies.
There's some of this old saying. I think it's Lombardi some of these quotations go on forever and ever. So like, and it's I don't know how I should comment on it, but one term that I heard was winning is not only everything; it's the only thing. Well, to say things like that, and the coaches will say stuff like that all the time, and it is a great saying. It's the only thing, but it's the work that requires to get there. That's why you win. Just to say you're going to win, that doesn't mean anything. But to do the work and what it takes to become a winner, that's what gets you there.
And students, you had a real live example this year of exactly what he is saying, because the work required, that's what's going to allow you to continue to be successful throughout your life. And an example of that this year was of not always winning is Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl this year. I mean, did Peyton Manning and his team prepare just as hard? Peyton Manning's known as one of the greatest preparers of all time. From what we hear, is that his preparation is unparalleled, which is why he's able to achieve the things that he is, or he has, but he still lost, so it happens to the best of us, losing. And my apologies to Kusa. I skipped you guys again. I'm horrible today. So Kusa, I'm sorry. Let's go ahead and go with the question from you guys, and then we will go to Bozeman.
And Jared, quickly there.
Sure.
I'm sorry. You're not going to win all the time. You're not, because people are so good. That's why there's going to be one undefeated team in the NFL, for example, in 60, 70 years or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not going to win all the time, but you need to prepare to win every time you do anything.
Excellent point. Thank you. Let's go to Coosa Valley in Alabama.
How did your life transition from college football to pro football?
Say that again. Change? Was there a big change from
college to pro?
College football to pro football? Well, yes, it is. But now when you talk about, there's a pretty big jump from a smaller school to the professional league. Now, you have a football team like you have, for example, at the University of Alabama. You got some tremendous talent there, a lot of pro prospects. The thing about what struck me in my particular position as a kicker on the difference was that in the college, every time, because I could kick the football so far, every time I came on the field, even if I missed the kick, people would see how far the ball would go in the air because I could kick it so much further than most of the other people in those days. So at least up there in Bozeman. Now, you get into the pros, that isn't good enough to kick the ball a long ways. They expect you to be good. They expect results because you are paid to do it. So the level of expectations add on a lot of pressure. But that's the way it is. And you should be very fortunate to have a chance to do that job in the pros. That just goes with the territory. So it's not easy. It's difficult, a lot of struggles, a lot of setbacks. But you have to expect that. But yeah, there's a big difference. But, you just do the very best you can. That's all you can do. And if you make it, you can never look. The worst thing you can do, I believe, if you look back later, even if you're in college or in high school, whatever you do, and think, I could have done better. That'd be an awful guilt feeling, I would think. So don't graduate from high school or college or whatever and come back and say, I wish I had done this better. You feel guilty for a long time. Don't do that. Have no regrets. do everything you can so those feelings will never come to the forefront. I think it'd be awful to have to say, well, I wish I had done that. My life would have been a lot better. Just do what's right now. You don't have to live with that.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Bozeman, Montana. It looks like we have about 5 minutes left, so we should be able to get to one question, possibly from each school. One last question.
Heather, where are you the most nervous while competing, and what do you do to surpass those fears?
You know, I'm not really sure what my technique was. Ski jumping, you stood on top of that slide to go down, you had to concentrate. I remember that. I remember getting on the team or on the field to kick a field goal. It was, and you know that you had to make it not only for the team and for winning the game, but the way it was in pro football when I was, if you had 2 bad days, 2 bad Sundays in a row, I would get cut. There were only 22 pro football teams when I started, and there were a lot of applicants for jobs. You had big colleges all around the country. They tried to find soccer players from South America, from Europe, so there were a lot of applications for the job. And there were times that I knew on the sideline, if I don't make this kick, not only am I going to get cut from the team, I'm going to be cut from the payroll. Now, a sports psychologist would not advise you to think like that these days at all. But I think I survived mainly because of fear of failure. I was scared to death to fail, and I did everything I could because I was scared I was so terrified of failure. So I did everything I could to minimize the chances of doing that. But as far as controlling the nerves, I'm not sure. I just knew that when I got on the field that I wouldn't be nervous anymore. And the only other thing I told myself in game-winning situations, slow down. Don't kick as fast. Don't run as fast up to the ball. Because even though you do it hundreds of times in practice, when the pressure is on, your body is going to react a little bit faster. But see, you train for this. You train your whole life. And you play high school football. You train and train and train, and you prepare. You go through a certain process, and that nervousness is not going to be a factor because you have a way of doing things. So you concentrate on those details, and then you don't have to think about the nerves.
Let's go to another good question there, Bozeman, too. But let's go to Fairfield Flattery.
My name is Carter Farrell, and how does it feel to be the only kicker in the Hall of Fame?
Thank you. How does it feel? Well, I answered the question. I'm the only one that's in the Hall of Fame that couldn't do anything else but kick, and that's the way it is to this point. I feel like it's almost a dream, and I may wake up and it isn't true. Not because I'm the only kicker, but the fact that I am in the Hall of Fame. Because there's so many great people out there, and to be in the position that all you had to do was kick to be in the Hall of Fame, that's very remarkable. I remember when I changed my scholarship in college from skiing to football, I thought, can you actually get a scholarship for just kicking a football? Then they told me you can probably make it in the pros. You have a chance. I said, can you actually make a living just kicking a football? So, and then get into the Hall of Fame as a kicker is remarkable. So, but when the next kicker goes in, that isn't going to change my feeling at all. I think a guy like Morten Andersen, who has kicked for about 25 years, is a real candidate, and so is Adam Vinatieri, who's made a lot of great Super Bowl kicks and had a great career. And I will be joined this year by a great punter, Ray Guy, who was universally known as maybe the greatest punter in our era. So that pleases me. I'm just very happy to be in the Hall of Fame. If I'm the only kicker, it doesn't really make any difference to me.
Another great question there, Flattery. Let's go to Copeland.
Hi, my name is Karina, and how did you get along with the people on your team?
That's a good question, because when you watch television now, they would say, that kicker over there, he's not a football player, which he isn't a lot of times. And they are a rare breed, and they're loners, and they're strange, and they sit by themselves on the bench, and they practice by themselves. That's what the commentators say when they describe a kicker, because they don't have anything else to say about him, I suppose. When I came to Kansas City, when I came to Montana State first, I had some great teammates at Montana State. They're lifelong friends. They still are, and they were so nice to me and welcomed me with open arms. Here's a foreigner going to a foreign game, and they were so polite and nice and made me feel welcome. In Kansas City, when I came here, we had a veteran team. They saw that I could help them, and also the veteran on the team in Kansas City made me feel very welcome. So I never had any problems at all like that. I always was able to feel very much part of the team. Plus, I tried to fit in. I would try to maybe on punt returns, I would try to line up at the 11th guy if I needed somebody on the field, if they were to hold the bags in practice or do certain things or certain workout routines that we did. I tried to fit in. Plus, my coach, Hank Stram, and my coach in college, Jim Sweeney, made me go to all the meetings. So that made me feel welcome, and I feel like I fitted in pretty well.
Great question. Thank you very much. And I see we have about 2 minutes left, so we'll go to Fairfield Shank, and I'm not going to forget you this time, Coosa Valley. So we'll go to those two questions, ask for closing remarks from Mr. Stenerud, and conclude the program. So go ahead, Shank.
Hi, my name is Megan Higgins, and I was wondering when and how did you figure out that winning isn't everything?
When I figure out that winning isn't everything. Well, it's more fun to win, okay? I remember as a young man, we played soccer and divided up. They didn't want me on my team because if you lost, I raised so much commotion, I guess. But I think you should strive to win, but you can't win all the time. But I think it's so important to do the very best so you prepare yourself to be the very best you can. Okay, but you're not going to win all the time. But the one thing I will stress though, don't ever go in without being prepared to win and be totally prepared. That is a must in life, to do the very best you can. So you can show the people around you and your team, your teachers and whatever, that you have worked hard and you are accountable, dependable, and committed with a lot of discipline. That you must do.
And and even in Mr. Stenerud's life, you heard him talk about the class that he had trouble with. Even though he worked hard, he sometimes got D's. In that one, I forget which class it was, but the one class. But they Super Bowl won. The Chiefs lost. I'm sure there were some contracts as he was developing business for his company that he did not get. So there are a number of losses in our record book as well. So students just know, you're not always going to get an A on the test. You're not always going to make the team. You're not always going to win the big game. But it's as Mr. Stenerud's already said over and over again, it's the effort to prepare to win. So that's the great message here today. Let's go to Coosa Valley for the last question.
What person stood by your side through both ups and downs?
I didn't hear it.
What person stood by your side through both ups and downs? Who was the one person that?
Well, I think. Well, first, your wife is the one. Your family. Your family is extremely important. In addition to teammates, the people closest to you. And I have to say, I had a good support group my whole life. Very fortunate that way. Very fortunate. There's no question. You can't do all this by yourself. So the people closest to you, your friends, your family, they are the teammates. So I was fortunate. I had a good support group. And so the people closest to you, they help you. They help you when you need them. And I'm sure you had a lot of good friends too. And you, of course, you earned the right to have friends too. You know that. The nicer you are to them, the nicer they're going to be to you.
And students, that support network that he's speaking of, that consists of, some folks that we don't necessarily have a choice of in our lives, that maybe we don't have choice, but most of those, a large majority of those folks, we do have a choice of who is going to be in that support network. So again, it's surrounding yourselves with those positive influences that are going to help you along in life and help you achieve the goals and maybe see things in yourself that maybe you didn't see for yourself. So with that being said, Mr. Stenerud, are there any closing remarks that you'd like to share, whether it's reiterating a specific point or whether it's sharing something else that we didn't touch on to close out the program?
Well, I tried to. The impression that I got from this hour is the young people I met at the school at Harmon here in Kansas City today, and also the people that came and asked me the questions. To me, they looked like really nice, polite, young quality people. And it's so refreshing for me because you read about, you watch the news, you read the papers. Sometimes you wonder what is the generation nowadays compared to when I grew up. So I was so impressed with the people I met today, Jerry. They were well spoken. They were polite. It was just a very nice, warm experience for me. So when I come home now, my wife is going to ask me, how was it? And I said, well, I had a great morning. Had a lot of nice kids from all over the country. And I'm so glad I came here today.
Great, thank you.
I'm glad I was invited to come because this was really, made me feel really good to see these young people and hear them speak and meet them. And they just impressed me.
And thank you, Mr. Stenerud. And students, if you want to mute your microphones for a second and join me in giving a warm round of applause to Pro Football Hall of Famer, Mr. Jan Stenerud.